Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel E-Zone. Please like it, subscribe it and share it with your friends and fellows. Our today's topic is respiratory system. In humans and other higher animals, exchange of gases is carried out by the respiratory system. The human respiratory system consists of two main parts. Number 1, air passageway, and number 2, lungs. Air passageway consists of the parts through which the outside air comes in the lungs, and after exchange of gases, it goes out. Down the labelings, some of the labelings are missing in your book. There is a nasal cavity. After the nasal cavity, there are nostrils. Then there is oral cavity. There is pharynx. After the pharynx, there comes epiglottis. Epiglottis is a lid-like structure. And then there is glottis, which is the opening of both the trachea and the esophagus. Then there comes the next structure, which is larynx. After the larynx, there is trachea, which is a windpipe. Trachea bifurcates into bronchi. And then the bronchi divides again and again into fine tubes called bronchioles. Then these bronchioles make lungs. There are alveolar ducts, and then there is a structure called diaphragm which is present at the base of the lungs. Now you can see there is the nasal cavity. After the nasal cavity, there is pharynx. After the pharynx, air enters into the larynx and then into trachea, and from the trachea it enters into bronchi and then into the bronchioles. The bronchioles end in alveolar sacs and the alveoli. These are the side small pictures showing the alveoli. The air enters into the alveoli and the gaseous exchange takes place there. And this is diaphragm, which is present at the base of the lungs. Now let's discuss alveoli. There are the alveolar ducts. Then there are arterioles and venules. Alveoli are the air sacs and the capillaries. Each and every alveoli is surrounded with a network of capillaries. And for the simplicity, capillaries have been shown around only one cluster of alveoli. Okay, so now we will discuss all organs in detail. Nasal cavity. It is also called as the nose. The nose encloses the nasal cavity. It opens to the outside through the openings called nostrils. The nasal cavity is divided into two portions by a wall. Each portion is lined by fine hairs and mucus which filter the dust particles from the air. The mucus also moistens and warms the incoming air and keeps its temperature nearly equal to that of the body's temperature. Okay, the next part is pharynx. It is also called as throat. The nasal cavity opens into the pharynx by means of two small openings called internal nostrils. Pharynx is a muscular passage and is common to both food and air. It extends to the opening of the food pipe and the windpipe. The air goes from the pharynx into the larynx. Larynx is voice box. Then there is glottis. Glottis is a narrow opening at the floor of pharynx which leads into larynx. It is just an opening of larynx and food pipe. Then there comes epiglottis. Epiglottis is guarded by flap of tissues which are just like the lid. Now the next part, that is larynx. It is also called as the voice box. The larynx is a box made of cartilage. Now what is cartilage? Cartilage is the soft bone. Here is a very clear view of larynx. In this diagram you can see the upper part, that is larynx. The location of the larynx is that it is present between pharynx and trachea. This is pharynx and this is trachea. It is present between pharynx and trachea. It is also called as the voice box. The vocal cords are present in larynx. Two pairs of fibrous bands called vocal cords are stretched across the larynx. They are used to make the sound. The vocal cords vibrate when the air passes through them. This vibration produces sounds. It is just like the strings of a guitar. The vibrations in the vocal cords and the movements of lips, cheeks, tongue, and jaws produce specific sounds which result in speech. Now let's have the definition of speech. Speech is an ability that only humans are gifted with, and this is one of the characteristics which has put human beings superior to all. तो तुम अपने रब की कौन कौन सी नेमत को झुटलाओगे? Page number 6. The question is, how is sound produced? The answer is on page number 6, first paragraph, and the side information written in blue. Trachea, the windpipe. The trachea is located just beneath the larynx. It is about 12 cm long tube and it lies in front of the esophagus. Esophagus is a food pipe. Esophagus is present at the back of the trachea. This is the food pipe, and the trachea lies just behind the food pipe. There are C-shaped cartilaginous rings are present in the wall of trachea. You can see in this diagram, these white rings are C-shaped cartilaginous rings. And these cartilaginous rings keeps the trachea from collapsing, even when no air is entering. There is another diagram showing the more clear view of trachea. So this is trachea having C-shaped cartilaginous rings in them. And above trachea there is larynx, which is a voice box. Okay, now comes the bronchi. On entering the chest cavity, the trachea divides into two smaller tubes called bronchi. The singular is bronchus. So trachea divides, and then the division of the trachea is bronchi. The bronchi also have cartilaginous plates in their walls. But remember, the cartilaginous plates are not C-shaped. Each bronchus enters into the lung of its side and then divides into smaller branches. Now there is a clear view of trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. Okay, trachea and bronchi. You can see the clear view of trachea and bronchi. The trachea and the bronchi are lined with two types of cells, the ciliated cells and the glandular cells. Ciliated cells. They have cilia in them. Now what are cilia? Cilia is a Latin word meaning eyelash. Small hair-like projections which covers the whole body is called as cilia. Like this is paramecium. In paramecium you can see the whole body of the paramecium is surrounded with small hairs which are cilia. The function of the cilia is that cilia beat with an upward motion so that the foreign particles along with the mucus are sent to the oral cavity, from where it may be either swallowed or coughed out. Now the glandular cells. They have glands which secrete mucus. What are glands? An organ which secretes hormones or chemical is called as the gland, and mucus is a sticky fluid produced by glands. Function of the mucus is that it moistens the air coming from the outside, and it traps any fine particles of dust or bacteria that have escaped from the nasal cavity. Do they do? The answer is the side information written in blue. Now here comes the bronchioles. The bronchi continue dividing in the lungs until they make several fine tubes which are called as bronchioles. The bronchioles progressively lose the cartilages as they become narrower. The alveolar ducts. The bronchioles end as the fine tubes which are called as the alveolar ducts. Each alveolar duct opens into a cluster of pouches which are called as the alveoli. Okay, now let's have a look of alveoli. Each alveolus is a sac-like structure lined by a single layer of epithelial cells. Now, capillaries. Each alveoli are bounded on the outside by a network of capillaries. Mechanism of gaseous exchange through air passageway. the pulmonary artery from the heart containing deoxygenated blood enters the lungs. Then the lungs are filled with oxygen, which is absorbed by the capillaries surrounding the alveoli. Now the blood becomes oxygenated, and pulmonary vein carries this oxygenated blood back to the heart.